Welcome to the Tell Her podcast, a place where we share stories from extraordinary, ordinary women, delve into what it's really like behind closed doors when dealing with life's ups and downs, and how women get the courage and push through and get up every day and carry on with our ordinary lives while doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Sharni Knighton, and I cannot wait for you to meet some of the incredible women that I get to meet through my work as a hair loss specialist. Welcome, Nicola, to the Tell Her podcast. I want to say thank you for coming out of your day. I know that you're really busy anyway with everything that you're doing. Looking at everything, even on your social media, it blew my mind how much you actually do and how many different, because you're working with HSBC, then you're in the gym. Yeah, how do you do that? How do you manage all of those? They seem like they're all passions as well. So how do you bring them all together and what makes you want to do that? Let's start there and then we'll fill out.
So what makes me want to do them all? I think for me, as you say, it's just a pure passion and interest.
Yeah.
And what I've learned through the years of being in martial arts is at one point in my life, if you ask me what my priorities were, it would have been martial arts, family health.
Yes.
Genuinely, that was the priority. And if you ask me, why don't you spend more time with family or why don't you take care of your health? My automated response would be like, well, you just don't understand how important this is.
Yeah.
And I think I spent a lot of my childhood within martial arts making, fighting my identity.
Yeah.
Like Nicola is fighting.
Okay.
So if I had a great day in the gym, I'd feel really good. And if I didn't have a great day in the gym, I'd feel really down. And so I was very conscious then looking at other martial art heroes, once they've got to their pinnacle and they're not at the age where they can continue to compete, everyone has that same struggle because, similar to me, they're just so fully identified as a martial arts enthusiast that then they're lost. If you take that away, then I didn't know what my life looked like.
Your identity.
Yeah, and it was that realization that it's okay, I need to branch out and find other interests and passions so that I don't fully, lose a lot of my life just thinking I'm this one thing. Yeah. And so if it's taken away, I still feel really grateful that I have all these other opportunities to dip into and expand and grow.
Yeah.
And
looking at your story as well, you have had parts of your journey where that could have happened to you quite easily. It could have been removed. But if we go right back to say childhood, like you say, if you've been in martial arts from being quite young, but I saw that were you a ballerina?
I was.
At some point. Yeah. So how did you make the transition from ballerina into boxer? How did that happen?
It was pure child logic. I did ballet. I even danced for the Royal National Ballet.
Wow.
And I did that for about 16 years. And everyone wears these leotards, right? And I had these 3 little, tiny, weeny medals that sewed onto my leotard. Yeah. It was a little gold, silver, bronze. And I used to compare myself to all the other girls.
Yeah.
And in my mind, they just looked like sequined fish because they were just littered in medals and medals and medals and medals. They'd walk and it'd be ching, 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 ching. Everything would ching. And I was I just really want to be good at something. Yeah. Really, really want to be good at something. And it was just pure child logic. It was if I'm bad at ballet, I'm too young not to have a gift. Mum says, everyone has a gift. So we'll go with Mum.
Let's find it.
And I was okay, so what's the most opposite sport? And at the time I was okay, it's martial arts. And so I made this big song and dance about I need to be a martial artist. I'm going to start Taekwondo. Had this expectation that I was going to be a ninja on the first time I turned up. Didn't like being punched in the face. Honestly, shut my eyes and turned my head. And I remember my coach being Nicola, you need to keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
I was but if they're going to hit me, I'd rather not see it as well. I'll feel it and then not see it.
And then
at
I'll
least
respond.
We have one. And you're this is not how it works. But I stayed really disciplined and kept turning up. And I was I'll do this for 6 months and then I've tried it and I'll move on. And when it got to 6 months, I'd started really enjoying learning. I was getting into it. But it was more the principles that Taekwondo taught at the same time that really grabbed my attention in terms of having integrity, having perseverance, having indomitable spirit.
Mm.
And it was those things that really kept me and allowed me to push through martial arts and start competing. And I think a couple of years later, I ended up with my first world title in Taekwondo, which was very surprising, but nice.
Yeah. You feel like the sport just aligned with you as a person, like you say, the integrity and that kind of thing. What age were you then when that happened, that switch?
So that was around the age of 16 is when I first actually started Taekwondo. And then it was like a couple of years later while I was at university that I then qualified for the World Championships.
Yeah.
And then gone out to Canada and won.
That's incredible. Because usually what you find, especially I saw this with my daughter, she was into cheerleading and she went to America and everything. When you usually get to 16 is when people start to teeter off. When you've done it like in the reverse. I suppose anybody looking at starting something new, it just proves that you can start at any age. Because I think if someone's thinking that they can be a champion in 16 to 18, they think they should have been training from 5 and 6. But I suppose as long as you've got enough passion and drive to push you through, anything's really achievable. And that's just proof of that. When you were doing this transition, did you still do the ballet or did you like leave that behind and start
I left ballet behind and completely just immersed myself in the Taekwondo world.
Yeah.
Trying to learn all the terminology because it was all in Korean, I think, at the time. And so I was trying to learn all the different kicks in Korean, all the different punches.
Are you an all-in girl then?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm definitely an all-in girl.
Going for it. With your parents then, 'cause when I was looking back at your history and everything, you had narcolepsy as a child.
Yeah.
So did you have that during like your ballet time and parents felt that was a safer sport that they could kind of put you into, knowing how focused you were as a person? How did they feel about you transitioning to something more dangerous?
So both my parents, I mean, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Both my parents really supported ballet.
Yeah.
And they used to turn up to all the competitions and dances and
punched
shows.
in the face.
Yeah. It's very stereotypical for like a young girl to be put in a tutu and dance. When I transitioned to martial arts, like initially they were both very supportive.
Yeah.
I think it was at the point where I wanted to start competing.
Yeah.
That's when it was a bit more difficult, I noticed, for my parents. I'm not a parent, so like I don't have that relatability.
Yeah.
But I can imagine parents probably don't enjoy watching their children be punched in the face, even if you know it's their passion. And so my dad in particular really struggled with that. And for about, I don't know, I want to say since 2012 till last year, so the end of 2024, he hadn't ever been to any tournament in any of the martial arts I competed. And at the end of last year, when I was signed to Frank Warren with professional boxing, that was the very first time he'd ever turned up, and it was my 5th professional fight. But you know what, it was so nice to have him there as a support, even though he found it really hard. And like, I asked him afterwards, did you enjoy it? And he was like, not really. But it was just nice to have that visible support, even though it's really difficult.
Did you find it distracting, or did you find it helped you push through?
When I'm in the ring, it's a very weird phenomenon in the fact that I don't hear anyone cheer.
And
I'm in there and I finish and I'm like, no one even said my name. I'm not there for the fanfare, but like, Mum, were you even shouting for me?
Yeah. And your brain just completely, your ears kind of shut off.
Yeah, the only person I can hear is my corner, so my coach Pierce, and my opponent's corner. And that's all I can hear. And every single time, like touch wood to this day, I've only ever been able to hear those 2 voices. And it's like everything else is just muted as background noise.
Is that common for people in the ring, or is that just a skill that you're able to?
I want to say it's common, but that being said, I haven't openly spoken about that. And I don't think it's a common talking point. No, not at all.
I'm a very really uncommon person, so you'll get lots of strange questions. I've been thinking of lots of things on the way. I'm thinking that's a strange question to ask, but I think a lot of the things that people daren't ask are what we're usually thinking anyway. So I like to think outside the box. But I think what I got from you and your journey is the fact that there were so many times when you could have turned away from something that you were so passionate about, different traumas happening, and then obviously what happened, I think it was in 2024, but we'll go to that in a minute. But my personal experience, this is what I was thinking about on the way here. I had back surgery last year.
Oh, wow.
So that is my excuse for not being fit. For everything. And like I was thinking about how I have chronic pain at the moment, but I know that pain and I can live with it and it's comfortable. But I also not being fit, I know not being fit also causes the pain, but I'm sitting in a comfortable place because I know it. So how have you always been able to, when you've got these challenges, remove yourself from where you're comfortable and still keep pushing through, even when, because I know you were in a car accident. I don't know the details about that, but there must have been points then when you just wanted to shut yourself away. Did boxing help you push through with the PTSD? Was it part of the process of healing? Because I feel like a lot of people, they would recoil and just become a little bit how I am at the minute. So I just wanted to get into the psyche of how, what you do, how we could help other people kind of understand pushing past that barrier.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have a barrier. And I know a lot of people that will listen to podcasts will have been through different traumas, and a lot of them have been through cancer treatments, and their bodies are very different to what they're used to. And I think you are afraid to push a body you don't trust anymore. Because that's what I said to you on the way here. I don't trust that I'm not going to fall over.
Yeah.
So like when you're at that point with something, what is it that you do to get pushed through that as a sports, like as a professional?
I want to say that's quite a complex, deep question. Because there's lots of different moments in my life that come to mind.
Yeah.
There's definitely because I think there's two sides to it. There's like almost the mental side to it, which for me really relates to the PTSD.
Yeah.
And that felt really dark. I felt like no one understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't want to tell any of my loved ones because they're used to seeing this really happy, positive, bubbly person. Mm-hmm. And I just so didn't feel like it. And I didn't want to bleed into their world because being, when you're very positive naturally, you're aware of like people's different energy. And if their energy is a bit low, you're like, you don't want to keep them so close. You want to keep that at arm's length. And I was like, oh no, but like now I need help. And I didn't have that appreciation, for like being able, being in a depressed state.
Yeah.
Like, to put it bluntly, like I still really hate saying that word, but I was having really unhealthy thoughts like, well, like what's the point in trying if in a split second our life can just be taken away? Like, why am I sacrificing absolutely everything for this one goal that may or may not happen, and I might just die tomorrow? And I haven't seen my family, and I've missed all the special events, and I haven't been building a relationship outside because all my energy has been just focused on this one goal.
Yeah.
And I just felt really lost.
Yeah.
I felt like, and this was like almost that identity crisis of I've just made myself so much martial arts. Now you've taken that away. Like I don't actually know what like I look like, because everything supported martial arts. And nothing else, to me at that time really mattered. And so coming out of that shell, I almost was reluctantly speaking to counsellors on my personal mission to prove that they have no help. I know it's terrible, but I was literally like, fine, I'll speak to 10, I'll speak to 20, I'll speak to 15, and I'll just prove to you that none of them can help. And I was literally having phone call after phone call, just be like, no. But I wasn't turning up ready to
I feel like a lot of people,
myself.
And I think when you are ready, it feels very different. I've gone through a lot of like counselling and different trauma therapies and stuff, so I completely. And sometimes you can speak to somebody and just know at the beginning of the conversation it's not going to go anywhere, but definitely know that when you are ready, it feels very different. So when you were at that point where you are trying to figure out who you are without martial arts, and you're kind of building yourself back up, do you feel that being able to do that and then be martial arts as well makes you better now?
100%. Like if I didn't have, like I wouldn't wish PTSD on my worst enemy. I genuinely struggled to even see a light at the end of the tunnel. It just felt black and black and black for days on end.
Yeah.
And it was only one time I decided, this is when I first started this switch into boxing. I didn't want to do any more kicking because everyone had this expectation that, she's a world champ, etc., etc. Like she's going to be great. And if I didn't feel great and hadn't been fit for ages, I didn't want this pressure of people thinking I was someone that I didn't feel like I was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll just do something completely different that has no expectation. And I went to do a boxing session in a park with a local boxer in Luton. And I just smiled for like a split second, genuinely like 0.0001 second. But honestly, that was just all the hope that I needed, that if I can smile for that and it was genuine, like maybe, I don't know, in 2 months' time, it'll be 1 second.
Yeah.
And I just needed that weeny bit of hope. And sometimes I think we just need a bit more blind faith, even if it just feels like nothing is progressing.
In that split second, did you try and fight it, the hope, or did you fully accept?
I mean, it was so small. I just noticed I smiled properly.
Yeah.
So much, like even, it was like, you know, it's like a little tweak on the side. And I was like, no way, I just tried to smile type thing. And it really caught me off guard, is that I just needed to put myself in maybe a different environment with different people who didn't know anything that was going on personally, who weren't going to make any judgments and were just going to like take me as I was, if that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense. It's like you became a person, not the PTSD, not the accident, not the other identity that you were connected to. I feel like people go through that in lots of times in their life. I definitely have as well. With your leaving behind that part of your like professional career in sport, did you have like a grieving process, or could you just cut it off and be like, that's that part of my life and step into the next part? Or did you go through a grieving, or did you go through the grieving during the PTSD? Was that all part of that?
I think it was a period of like finding myself again.
Yeah.
Like immediately after the car crash, I tried to go back into like a kicking martial art and tore my ACL, MCL and dislocated my knee all in one go.
I think I saw a video of you with a boot on. Is that
had a boot on, I had a wheelchair, had crutches.
But you were still training though.
Yeah, sat down like, I don't know, thinking I was Rocky or something.
Well, the perseverance and the pushing through and no matter what, that's like incredible anyway. Even you're fighting your own demons. I think a lot of us have been there fighting those demons. It's difficult. And like say, it's very difficult to explain to somebody what it actually feels like.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to your other point in terms of like trying to get over that initial trauma, I did feel traumatized by my knee injury. And when I went to return back to sport, I mean, I had to learn to like re-stand and re-sit. And I remember just laughing with the physiotherapist. Like I'd forgotten how to sit because I'd been sat in a wheelchair for so long.
Right. So were you driving the car and then the injury was on the bottom half of your body then? So that's where...
Oh, so I had the car accident.
Are you okay to speak about?
Yeah. I had the car accident, and then when I was on the mend and coming out of that, I went back to a martial arts session.
And then that's when you had the...
Yeah, I was sparring one of the coaches and they went to sweep me, but instead of like kicking my leg, he trod on my foot and just rotated my upper body. And so my knee just tore out.
Yeah.
And so that was the sort of...
On top of that.
Yeah, that was the additional injury. But you know what? It felt so much easier to deal with because for me, when you have a physical injury, like there's very much a blueprint. It's like you go see the doctor, he gives you the plan, you have rehab, you have physio, they tell you it takes about 6 months. Okay. When you have something mental, it never felt like anyone could give me a blueprint. It was like, try X, Y, Z. These may or may not work. And you need to do them for 6 months to 3 years, and you may or may not feel better. And I was like, wait, what? Like, where do you start?
Where's the logic?
You know, there's no blueprint. And I felt so lost. I was like, I don't even know if this is helping. I don't know if I should continue doing this. You know.
I feel like with like mental health, we do a lot to make the people around us feel more comfortable.
Yes.
You don't actually want to tell, like you say, you don't want to tell people what that dark thought is that's just popped into your head, or how you're really feeling. And I don't know about you, but I had moments during some of my dark times when I did try and say something, and because people aren't expecting it from you, I felt like they just didn't listen. And then that just cemented it to me that it was like, okay, I'll just draw a line under it. I'm not going to say anything at all. And I think like you were saying earlier, when you're such a happy, positive person all the time, people kind of can skip over when you are trying to reach out. So then you continue to make them feel comfortable all the time, recoiling and getting darker and darker. Did you find a therapy that did work for you, or did you find that sport was your therapy?
I want to say it was like a mixture of both.
Okay.
I think going through a bunch of counsellors, eventually I found someone that I did help, because sometimes I felt like we were talking about stuff that, I don't know, was opening up a Pandora's box I wasn't even sure we needed to go into. And I was like, I don't think this is it. Plus I feel worse. So maybe we shouldn't have gone down this path, you know? And so it did take a really long time to find someone who worked for me, and who appreciated how important sport was, because that was my difficulty, is that no one had like been a professional athlete that I'd spoken to that understood how my prioritization had worked. Because to like the logical brain, and I mean to me now, like sport's important, but it's now not number one.
Okay.
It's health and family.
Yeah.
But it was not that.
I suppose that when it was number one, you were at a time in your life when you didn't really have to think about health. Like it's different, isn't it? When different times, I never thought about my health in my 20s and stuff. I'm like 42 now. I have to think about it all the time.
You look great for 42 though.
A bit of Botox is all good.
I think we all feel invincible as like,
in your 20s. Yeah, it's and things work in parallel, don't they? The things that would have benefited you then wouldn't benefit you now in this part of your life, and vice versa. If we go back to like the different things that have happened, because you've always had sport in the background, did you, when you was a child then, and you had your narcolepsy, were you doing your ballet then?
Yes.
In parallel?
Yeah.
So you've always had like things happening, and the parallel has been the sport. So it will have helped you along the way, but I suppose, like you say, you've had to learn to disconnect and it be the only help for you, and bring in other things. I had something called EDMR. Have you ever had that kind of therapy?
No, what's EDMR?
It's like, I think that's how you say it anyway. That's like a trauma therapy. But as you were saying earlier, sometimes you feel worse before you get better. And that was a therapy that I had, and you've literally relived the trauma. It's like it's just happened to you. So I couldn't speak for 3 days.
Wow.
I was like crying, but it did work. And I always say to everybody, like, if you're going to go into these kind of therapies and you are looking for a therapist, you need to be prepared for the work that comes with it. But you also do need to trust your gut as well, and know that if a therapy is going to work for you. So I had that therapy, but I never did it again.
I mean, it sounds intense. It doesn't sound like something you'd sign up to do immediately.
And a little bit like how you were saying, I felt like if I kept going back for it, it would open a Pandora's box about things I have actually dealt with.
Yeah.
And didn't feel the need to keep going on. I think you get to a certain point where we've dealt with the past, now let's make a plan for the future. And a lot of therapy, sometimes you can keep going back to the past.
Yeah, just get stuck there a little bit.
Yeah, but I know that the work does need to be done, because I found, I don't know if you found this, that I couldn't build the future without actually dealing with that particular thing. So especially for you, you're going in a ring. If your brain is going off somewhere else while somebody's trying to punch you in the face, that's never going to end well, is it? So you need to be focused. So with your
and that's why I love boxing.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not often spoken about, because a lot of people, you know, they do boxing for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
But for me, it's definitely the fact that every time I step through the ropes, I feel like I'm a better version of myself.
Yeah.
Because as you say, I need to get everything in a line in my personal life, because it's like, well, if I can't have this difficult conversation with them and I can't say that, and, you know, if I've got all of this stuff on my chest, which I haven't actually, that I'm not at peace with, how am I going to deal with someone who actually wants to take my head off? Like, it's nuts. And so that almost is the little voice that pushes me as to these like silent deadlines that, you know, before a fight, I need to have all this in order. Like, I need to be happy with everything else that, you know, and be super transparent with you know, anyone and everyone, because I just feel like if I can't do these little things.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that, but that makes perfect sense why. Do you do the thing that you see a lot of professional boxers do where they cut a lot of things out or people before and kind of just have like this little bubble so that you can focus? Or do you find that, like, say, finding peace with everybody so that they can be part of the journey is okay?
So for me, it's more about creating the lifestyle and environment that it's always supportive, like it's always tight knit. So there'll always be that core group. But equally, you know, like life isn't perfect. There's difficult, awkward, challenging conversations, you know, in professional and personal lives. But they'll all be had, you know, like before I fight. And it's almost like a bizarre, quiet deadline that I give myself is like, I need to sort all of this out because I need to do this for my own sort of like inner peace to be able to like step into the ring calm with nothing else on my mind, and to give me like the best possible opportunity of like stepping in that flow state that athletes
I feel like we all need that. I don't want the punch in, but I could do with the silent deadline.
You know, it's like that little nudge, because I feel like if I don't have a boxing fight, it's okay to let things like build and, you know, tick over. Whereas if I've got something there, I'm like, oh, come on, sort this out now.
Yeah, I have one particular thing at the minute that keeps popping into me. I'll literally be brushing my teeth and you think about it. Then I'm in the shower, you think about it. And it's not healthy to leave those things unsaid and, eating away at you. So it makes perfect sense why it would not only benefit the boxing, but your mental health as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people, we have those unsaid things. It's really difficult, isn't it? Because when you're having conversations with people, what could help you feel better can make them feel worse. So I find that difficult to manage. But I suppose if you're trying to create an environment of people who are going to be positive and help you on your journey, and you're going to do the same for them, then they're trusted people, so you should be able to have them conversations.
And I think it's just sometimes about the delivery, right? Like, so long as it's coming from a good, genuine place, like your loved ones and your support network, like 9 times out of 10, I said like want to be like should be able to see that. You know, so I don't think they're likely to take it personally, you know. And I think it actually builds a better relationship if you're able to sort of communicate honestly.
But with boxing, like my brother, he's wanting to go in. We were talking the other day about him wanting to go into boxing to help him focus and all those other things. Would you say if somebody's going into this kind of sport, that it would be better to do the work mentally first, or could it be part of the work? Does that make sense?
It's like for me, it's definitely part of the work.
Yeah.
You know, just turn up and throw yourself in the environment. It's like the biggest growth spurt you're going to get. You know, even just familiarizing yourself with all of the different techniques and combinations sometimes feels like a bit of a mental overload. And then the next level up from that is sparring. So then being able to apply all of that, but against a live opponent. And anyone who's ever had any sparring match, you think you're really fit and then you touch gloves for your first fight and you're like, oh, the adrenaline's here. You know, and it feels like they've done about 10 rounds. And so it tests you a multitude of ways.
Yeah, it definitely does. I never said this before, but when I was younger, I think I must have been in like my late 20s, I got overweight. And then I went to an MMA fight, and one of the guys there, he's got a gym in Rosington. They took me under their wing.
Oh, wow.
So I did MMA for probably about a year. I lost 4 stone. It's the fittest I've ever been in my life. But it really helped me mentally and physically at the time. And we were laughing the other day, talking about like your mental state and like it being the right time, that after like years and years, I decided to go back, got into the ring with all these people that I'd fought with before. The first punch that I had, the little tear came down my face. But all of these people thought that I was that old person.
Yeah.
So like, and back then I was probably quite angry is the wrong word. Angry is not the right word. I had a lot inside me that I'd not dealt with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like very aggressive.
Yeah, so the being in the ring really helped me with that, but you do have to still be disciplined, so you can't obviously lose your head or anything. And they helped me a lot with all the discipline. And then in the next part of my life, when I tried to go back maybe like 8 years later, I was very happy and all of that kind of thing. And I was embarrassed as well. So I got this punch in the face, a little tear came down, and I had to stay for the whole session because I was too embarrassed to say that I needed to leave, because I was like, this is, what am I doing? I'm absolutely insane. Why would I want someone to punch me in the face? But I suppose it served me at the time, and it doesn't. And part of what I was when I was looking at all of your bits on social media, how you were talking about, you have like this feminine energy as well, and you like to do all your pretty things and all of that kind of thing, and then you can be masculine and when you're in the ring. How do you do both? Because I clearly couldn't. Like, I was definitely in my masculine energy when I lost the 4 stone, and I used to love it. I'd be sick after my session, and that would feel great because I'd push myself like to the brink. And I had this little tap on the face the next time when I felt like I was in my feminine energy, and I was not there for it. It was like a no. So how do you do both? How do you balance that?
So when I'm in the ring, I think in my head I've got very clear boundaries now.
Okay.
And so when I'm in the gym space, if we're training, I still feel like I can be myself, and it's, very feminine energy. But the minute anything's sparring and it has that element of competition, for me it's then like, okay, we switch, because this is where I really need to embody the Burmese python, so my fight name.
Yeah.
That's like the alter ego that gets into the ring, does all the crazy stuff. I really need to embody that and immerse myself in like this fight scenario. And it's more of just a bit of a switch. Anytime the mouth guard goes in, it's like, okay, so this is like game time.
Okay.
And it's just a bit more of a mental switch. And I've got a reminder on my mouth guard that says like boss, and so I put it in. I'm like, we've got to change now,
Yeah.
And it obviously helps when you're at a fight, because you're in the changing room, you've got your ring walk out, and it's very easy to immerse yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
But I suppose for me, it's just having those either mental or like visual cues to remind me like what persona I need to step into. But at the end of the day, I'd still say, like, even when I spar at the gym, in between rounds, I've got this smile on my face, and we're touching gloves in between, and everyone's like, it's really crazy that you do that. Like, it's a bit off-putting.
Like switch.
Can you not? But I think when you enjoy it so much, and for me, it's just the gym's a safe space to learn. I just think, like, why wouldn't we choose to enjoy this?
I suppose we need to probably accept that we do have lots of different parts of our personality. And like you were saying earlier, when you were just attaching it to one, like when you were just attaching it to the Taekwondo, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then maybe you're doing so well now because you've got all of these elements and you allow them and you are a whole person. I think for a lot of people, we probably should do that in life in general, that it's okay to be one person in one place. Like, I'm a mum and I've got my mum energy, and then I'm at work, I want to be like boss energy kind of, and then a mentor and that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of the time we don't feel like we can do that.
Yeah.
And there's that word, isn't there, all the time, like authenticity, like be your authentic self. But I think even authentically, there are lots of versions of ourselves.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah. And it's just turning up as the right person for the situation.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, I don't, when I'm going to go fight, I'm not all like smiles, and everyone's like, it's really weird, we don't see you smile. I'm like, yeah, because that's not the right place, right? It's not that I'm not happy. It's just, it's not the right place or setting. And, when you're comfortable enough to know yourself, you just sort of have your toolbox of skills, and you just pick and choose which are the most appropriate, and I think we should do that more.
Encourage people to do that, definitely. But going back to what I just said when I said, like, because I kind of didn't like that I said it when I did, but when you say like masculine energy and feminine energy, but I don't know if that's right, because there's loads of really strong, powerful women. Even like when you look in history or like in other cultures, like the women can be the hunter-gatherers.
Yeah,
it's just
warrior energy, and queen energy.
So rather than like, rather than masculine and feminine. Yeah, obviously boxing is like mainly a male sport. Are you finding that it's easier to find opponents now? There's more women in the sport, or have you found that it's changed over the years that you've been doing it? Or
so I've been a professional boxer for 3 years, I'd say yes, like women's boxing is growing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely still the challenge of finding opponents, especially ones that help you build a pathway to getting to a world title that makes the same sense as for the males. So in the women's, a common problem that we have is that you have lots of world-class elite athletes who have come straight out of the Olympic GB boxing team. And so, you know, they can just jump on titles and go to the top very quickly because they're already at that level.
Okay, I didn't realise that. So they get to come in at a higher level.
Yeah, because they've got a whole host of experience.
Yeah,
so
they've already built, but in a different place. Okay.
Exactly, why not? Whereas if you've just turned over, so I didn't have any amateur boxing experience. Mine has come from a mix of different martial arts. I want to like build my way up, like have individual stepping stones, like an individual build of challenge. And so you either have a pool at the bottom where it's sort of low level, and then you have a very high level.
Okay.
And then the gap in between is so small.
Okay.
And so, you know, and in the space of, for a female fighter, you know, you could have like 2 comfortable fights. And then maybe by like your 6th fight, it's titles. And so you've had no learning time really.
Yeah.
Whereas if you compare it to the males, they'll have, I don't know, maybe 15 learning fights, and then they'll come in maybe one of the lower level titles. Whereas for women, the pool is so small, you hit the titles very soon, which is great, but it also means that the competition is like very high because there isn't that breadth to actually like improve your skill, like gradually. The
practice.
Sort of like thrown in the deep end.
Is part of your mission like to help bring more women into the sport? Is that why you like to do a lot of these conversations? So this is obviously your time that you're giving to me now. And I've noticed that you do a lot of things with different, I don't know if you do charities, but I saw that you were at a school doing lots of different things. Like what is the goal for you when you're going out doing all of this like public speaking and...
Yeah, so my goal is just to inspire as many women as possible.
Yeah.
Whether they're little girls who need a role model to look up to plant the seed that, you know, martial arts is for women too, and that could be them one day, and to give them that insight, you know. So there's the younger generation, and then there's women like myself who are leaders in the corporate space. And I think being in the corporate space, you know, working for HSBC, I'm grateful that it's so flexible and I'm able to do everything. But I definitely notice, especially in the technology world of where I work, has its similarities to boxing in the fact that there are focused areas where almost you're still in a bit of a man's world. And so I do also enjoy spending a lot of my time going out and helping coach women who are existing leaders or wanting to step into leadership roles. So actually, as we were saying, they can be really authentic and they can pick and choose which skills they want to turn up to be the leader that they choose to be.
Yeah.
And that gives me the most enjoyment and pleasure in life. And I just want people to know that you can do anything. And I think sometimes we're told that, yes, you can do everything, but not all at the same time. You know, but I'm like, yes, we can. We just have to like prioritize it a little bit. Yeah. But just because you're focused on one thing doesn't mean that you can't then do everything else.
I think it's a skill that has to be learnt though as well, so that you don't get burnout. But that's why mentors are so important. So if you're mentoring women and helping and inspiring, I think sometimes when you're the leader and the first one, you're the one that you're paving the way, aren't you, for everybody else? Do you have somebody that did that for you? So I know you're trying to do it for the women, but who is it that you look to try and inspire you? Or are you having to pave the way?
So as cliche as it sounds, it was my mother.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd say, I owe her the world, and if I could be half the person like she is, I'd done a great job personally, you know. So she came over from Burma with all of her brothers and sisters. I think they were like 6 or 7. Didn't really get through school, and then self-taught to end up being a HR director globally for a private equity firm. So from going like from 0 qualifications at school to where she was able to retire to, you know, for me was just such a great role model.
She's definitely paved the...
I thought she was such a trailblazer. And I remember always, you know, as a kid, she'd tell me about the conversations that she would be having at work, you know, especially again in a male-dominated world, about how she had to be fair but firm. And, you know, not everyone liked her, but that was part of the way that you built self-respect for yourself as well. And I really feel like she taught and equipped me with all those skills to help carry that on. I
really like that as well. Like, not everybody's going to like you, but that's how you build self-respect. So it's staying true to yourself, even though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So with your mum then coming over, did she come over with her parents? They all set up here? And what, did her brothers and sisters go off and do different things? Or
it was a bit of a sad story. So they came over from Burma. I think she was a teenager, maybe 15 years old, with 7 brothers and sisters. Her father, so my granddad, died when she was also young of cancer. My nan found it really hard, so her mother found it very hard to look after the family.
Yeah.
And she basically took it upon herself to be the breadwinner for the family, cook, look after, you know, all of her younger brothers and sisters, see her as the mum.
That's incredible.
And so she carried them all forward, and they've all done really well. And I just sort of look at that and I just think, from nothing, it just shows that we can still be like a really powerful presence if we're willing to put in that hard work.
Yeah. And she definitely did.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Cooking and cleaning for 7, and then obviously being a mother and a wife and everything else. That's like incredible.
And lots of personal courage to be able to stand up and, you know what was fair for her.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, you know, especially in the corporate world, like salary negotiations are really awkward, but she'd so proudly speak at the way that, you know, she was able to bring it up and, you know, get her fair pay because, you know, she knew what her worth was. And I find that really admirable.
And my partner, every time he starts a new job, he does the whole negotiation thing. And I remember when he first told me he was doing it, it absolutely blew my mind that like somebody dared just say that I think this is what I'm worth. And I think women are getting better at that, but it sounds like your mum was already there before a lot of us. Like one of my other clients, she's just written a book about it.
Wow.
About going out and getting the pay rise and doing all of that, and it's incredible. But the fact that we're only having those conversations now, and your mum was doing it like 20 odd years ago, was like incredible. She's really
and being able to do it in person as well, I think is like another little edge, because it's very easy to send an email to be like, hi, I think I deserve this, but to be able to, you know, have that conversation face to face, I think it takes a bit of courage. I don't know many people who can like so confidently have those conversations and not feel a bit of a oof. Yeah. You know, I don't know what they're going to say. How am I going to handle that? And I just think like, what a beautiful skill to be able to have.
The resilience as well. And that's clearly like been passed on to you. Do you have siblings, or is it you and your mum? And
so my mum, my dad, and I have one younger sister. Okay. And it's tight knit 4.
Yeah. So you pass it on to all of you. With your career now, what is the goal moving forward? Obviously, you've got your corporate career, and like you say, you're really lucky that HSBC, they're like really, you're a HSBC hero. So so if somebody Googles you, that comes up, doesn't it? And they can have a look on the website, and they're really, really supportive of you. What will happen, say, if your career goes one way or the other, or do you think you'll be able to keep doing this parallel? Because you seem to be able to do that throughout your life anyway, have this like parallel.
Touch wood. Yeah. Touch wood. I hope if I can keep the balance.
Yeah.
I'd like to progress as much as I can with HSBC, and also one day win a world title in boxing.
And prove that you can.
Yeah.
You can have it all.
That you can do both. I remember watching the Olympics some time back, and I think there was an Olympic athlete who was also or had just recently qualified as a doctor. And I was like, how have they done both? Like, they just prove that you can do anything.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It was absolutely blew me away.
That is amazing. I think like a lot of the time when we think about women doing everything, we always just think about motherhood and work, but there are so many different parallels, like we were saying, that you can choose 2 different paths and run them one by the side of each other. I suppose as long as you've got the support network, do you feel that your network is really important, and that you have built the team now around you that you need to keep going forward? Or are you still looking to bring things in, other things you want to develop?
So for me, I'd say really happy with family, really happy with relationship. I feel like for me personally, I'd like to develop better friendships.
Me too.
That's my thing.
I feel like friendships are so difficult though, like in the modern world.
For sure.
Yeah, I think of all ages, like building friendships is difficult. I was just saying the other day with my friendships, I don't know if I end up building them through work because there are clear boundaries and expectations. And then sometimes when you're a busy person like yourself, you need to be around other people who understand, like, that you're not always going to be available. Or if you, does that make sense? Is that kind of what you struggle with, or is it just that you are so busy bringing people in is difficult?
For me, it's like picking the right friends, so that they can be like a trusted member in my support network.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I've got such a nice setup now, and I'm so grateful that everyone I have, that I can trust them with my life.
Yeah.
I'd like to find a friend or friends.
Yeah.
But you know, like the real close-knit tight ones.
Yeah.
That I can actually give them more time as well.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't feel so much one way.
Yes.
I definitely this year, my focus is to hopefully spend more time building on the friendships I have, so I can actually improve the quality.
Yeah.
Because if I don't give time, I can't expect that they're just like miraculously going to be great.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And I'm guilty of not giving enough time to friends.
I'm the same. I think a lot of us are when we're quite focused on, like, I'm the same as you. I have lots of things going on, so it's difficult. And if I have got time, I'm trying to give it to my family as well. Like not my immediate family, obviously they have all my time, but like I've got a sister and a nephew and all of those things. I want to nurture those relationships as well. But I do miss friendships.
Yeah.
Like those, and you always look at like the groups on Facebook and you see other people and they're all going off doing things. And I think, oh, like where are mine? So I completely get that. But like you say, if you haven't got the time or you're not putting it in, you can't expect.
Yeah. And I know for me, that's like one of the key factors.
Yeah. I think I was telling somebody the other day, have you heard of an app called Peanut?
No.
Yeah. So I might be wrong, but I'm almost certain that the lady that invented the app called Peanut had something to do with Tinder.
Oh,
at
really?
some point, and she's now created an app called Peanut, and it's an app for friendships. So you go on and you look for friends, basically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But I think it started out using for like new mums to find other new mums.
Yeah.
And I was just saying I might go on there and start putting it in, but I was talking to somebody else and she was saying she wants to do like a women's group so that we can all start meeting up. So I do think a lot of women are feeling the same.
Yeah.
I don't think you're alone in that feeling, but we probably just don't talk about it either.
Yeah, I think there's that. And I think as well, you know, it's great that everything's so remote and flexible, but I definitely have less contact with new people.
Yeah, me too.
I can definitely do my job from my workspace at home.
Yeah.
Because it's a global team. Even if I go into the office, that I don't actually interact with anyone else there because they're not part of the team.
Yeah.
And then similarly for boxing, that's so, in my mind, so professional. It's not like a friendship circle. Like it's support because I want everyone to do well and vice versa. But it's not meeting new people. Like I'm not immersing myself in a new environment. And when you're younger, like you go to university and like there's just an abundance of people you could bump into and say hello and you're a friend, you know?
I suppose what's difficult as well, I think when you've got, I don't know if persona is the right word, but you've got an online presence, is that when you meet somebody, they already feel like they know you.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's difficult to let them see it's really difficult because you're not pretending to be anybody else, but it is this person that you present is very different to the person who's sat at home in I have an oodie and my cup of tea. Like that's the person that needs nurturing, that person that's sat at home, not necessarily the person who goes to work or the person that's doing this. So I think like you say, if you're not immersing yourself in groups of people that just see you for that in that moment. I'm always meeting people through my work.
Yeah.
And that makes it more difficult. Moving, like, so I'm trying to think, with your friendships, do you still have friends that you've had from school? Or have you found because your journey's been so busy and you've got so much going on, have you kind of, what's the word want to say shed, but that's not the right word either.
Outgrown,
Like
maybe?
outgrown those friendships. Yeah, shed sounds really awful. But yeah, have you kind of lost those friendships along the way? And because I'm looking at now trying to go back and re-nurture those old friendships and trying to think about like how come that happened.
Yeah. Interesting question. I feel like some friendships you naturally outgrow anyway. A lot of the time, I think, you know, at certain times in your life, it makes great sense because you're sort of on a similar path and you sort of like values and things like that align. And then as you grow older, you know, you might drift apart. And, you know, there's definitely friendships that are worth, that you feel like are always there. Like I know my like secondary school friendship group, I could drop them a message and it would be lovely. And so I think as an adult, it's just more of like a conscious decision of like who you want to connect with if you only have, you know, a certain amount of time. And so now I think my most recent friendships have come from martial arts, but from doing sort of K1 kickboxing. I'm just conscious a lot of them are in the south and now I'm in the north. And, you know, that's an added complexity in terms of how do you keep the closeness and openness of a friendship when there's that distance, especially when you don't get actual FaceTime with them, you know?
Yeah, not that connect, that it's the connection and community, isn't it? And that I think when the connection's not there, it's hard to build the community, even if the community is online. So when you were saying like you were down south, what made you come up here? Is that for your career?
I purely came to Sheffield for boxing. And it was quite a sweet story. I wanted to change gym, so I was on this mission to sort of visit this gym in Sheffield called Still City Gym in Darnall. And I turned up, thought it was brilliant, accepted a fight, and my coach was like, "Okay, we start in 2 weeks' time. Like, you need to be here." And I was like, "Oh no!" Like, it was like over Christmas. I was like, "I've got nowhere to stay." I was like, "I don't even know what I'm gonna do." And I was wandering around one of the churches in town, and the priest was like, "You're not from here." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I explained my little saga. He was like, "I'll email the congregation and see if anyone will take you in." And this like beautiful couple who are now like I want to say extended parents of Sheffield said, "We have a room." And I literally turned up like just after New Year's to be like, "Hey, do you have a room for me?"
I love
I'm
that.
like your adopted southern child. And I was meant to stay with them, I think it was only meant to be for 3 months, but it ended up being a year. And yeah, they are one of my biggest blessings from moving up here.
It's like a huge leap of faith as well.
It was so lovely. And I was just like, it's going to work out. And I had no idea how. And then it just worked out.
I absolutely love that. Are you religious anyway? So did you go to church because you were looking for something?
I just
like
sort of wondered
you needed
and
a
like
moment.
going to visit cathedrals and new churches when I'm in the area.
Yeah.
But I hadn't specifically gone to
have a moment.
Yeah. And it sort of all just happened, quite naturally.
Yeah, I love that. It is incredible. It just shows that you do have to put yourself outside of your comfort zone and trust.
Yeah,
like really trust in the process.
Right?
Did you meet your partner? Did he have to move with you? Have you met him since you've been here? Because obviously then they've got to take the leap of faith with you.
So my other half, we actually both met auditioning for BBC Gladiators. Yeah, I know, neither of us got in, but when we were leaving, I was driving him past and I was like, I'll just ask him out, and if he says no and he has a girlfriend, like I'll just drive off into the sunset and never be seen again. So I like wound down the window. I did the male line, you know, where you wind down the window and you ask them if they need a lift to the train station, even though you know they have a car.
Yeah.
Just to get some sort of conversation going.
I love that. That's amazing.
And then I've got his number and we've been together ever since.
I'd love that.
But didn't get on Gladiators, but hey, at least it's
you don't
a fun
need
story.
Gladiators
We don't need it now.
Got a whole different story. That's fine. So obviously he's a gym enthusiast and that's
almost more than me, like gets up at 3 a.m. to go to the gym and goes to bed like very strictly at 7.
Do you think that that's important when you are focused on health, that you are with somebody who has a very similar focus, so that
I wouldn't even say for me it's about focus. It's just, I almost see it as it's nice that they make that a priority.
Yeah.
It's nice to not only know that health is a priority to them, but they actually then take the action to put it first, to make sure that they're, you know, staying fit, in good shape, looking after themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, if you can't look after yourself and you're not treating yourself the best possible that you can,
Yeah.
like, how am I to expect that you're able to do the same for me?
Yeah. About trusting.
Yeah.
Talking about like health, and you've spoke about how important it is to you. I know that was it in 2024, you had a health scare. So I don't like to read too much because I like to learn as I'm like interviewing. So it's really, do you want to talk about that? What happened?
So as part of having your professional boxing license, every year you're called to do a full medical. That includes having a brain scan. And during the brain scan, they had identified that I'd got this growth that had come up when they'd compared back to the previous brain scans. It transpired that it was a brain tumour. And the first doctor I went to see said, basically you need to have brain surgery as soon as you're comfortable, which was obviously quite a bomb to drop.
Gosh.
Especially when I wasn't expecting it. I was like, la, 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 you know, like, and I didn't really understand like why my parents wanted to come with me, because I'm like, I'm 30 now. I can go to the doctors by myself. And they're like, no, we'll come to see the neurosurgeon with you. And I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. No, no, no. And then, yeah, the minute he said like, you're having brains, you know, you've got a brain tumor and you need surgery, it was almost like, wait, what?
Yeah, gosh.
But, you know, and I didn't have any decent questions to ask.
Be in shock.
Yeah, I was in complete shock. And I didn't really know what to do immediately afterwards. I was just, my default was like, let's be super positive. And my mum was like traumatized and like visibly very upset, because obviously she's just been told her daughter has a brain tumor. And I was like, well, let's go get a Chinese, because like food makes better. She's like, this isn't even nice. I was like, hey,
your mum was just playing along.
And then I decided to get a second opinion, because I was like, it's just a lot for like one person to look at a scan and be like, now we're going to, you know, give you brain surgery.
Yeah, gosh.
And the second neurosurgeon said, oh, actually, it's benign. Like, we don't think we need to operate, but maybe a couple of years down the line. And so ever since, I've been having regular scans, and it's slowly growing. And I think at some point they'd like to take it out.
Okay.
But they've said at the moment, boxing isn't exacerbating it. And so I just made the decision that until they tell me it's negatively impacting like my health, and they've cleared me and they give me the genuine okay, that I'll just continue to enjoy doing martial arts for as long as I can. And when that moment comes, then that's the decision to flip it. But yeah, it was a lot to take on, because I don't think anyone's ever expecting to tell you that.
No, definitely not. With them, especially because did you not have any symptoms prior or anything then either? So
no, I was just feeling tired, but as part of like having narcolepsy, which is basically, I had it really bad as a kid. So if you're having like a narcoleptic episode, your brain just switches off. So if we're talking, I'd like fall asleep without knowing and be out for like 3-4 hours.
Okay.
And that sort of grew out as a kid. And so like now I don't really get any of those symptoms at all. And so I was like, maybe it's just tiredness linked to, you know, the whole narcolepsy thing as a kid, and sort of just dismissed it.
So were you, sorry to go back, will you have narcolepsy for the rest of your life? You'll just have like episodes?
So
anyone...
when I had it as a kid, I had it quite bad up until the age of about like 14, 15. And it properly, I think I had my last proper narcoleptic episode at the end of university. And ever since then, I've only had the other symptoms, which are sort of like night terrors and sleep paralysis and things like that.
None of them very nice.
No, but
you're like saying it like it's nothing.
But like touch wood, nothing else. And so I don't know. The doctors say it will come back at some point, but like so far we've been sound.
Do you think that because you've always had to be resilient from being very young, and you've always probably, when you're not having an episode, do you always feel tired?
You just generally feel more tired than like the usual person, I'd imagine.
So you feel like that's maybe why you can push your body more than the average person, because you're already working harder than the average person anyway. So does that make sense?
It does. I just think we're all made the same in some bizarre way in my head. So I just think
Yeah.
if I
You're
can
definitely
do it, you
working
can
harder
do
than me.
it.
Because mentally and physically you're working harder and your body's working harder anyway, isn't it? But that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about you earlier, because from being a child, your experience has been so different. So then when somebody's in the gym and they're probably at that point where they're going to give up, I would probably give up, but that's probably normal to you. So that you can go further. So it kind of has been like a catalyst in your being able to push your body.
I definitely think it's helped shape me for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you'd rather not have it, but
I don't know. I look
who
back
you
and I
are.
wouldn't regret not having it, because I think it helped me deal with failing as a kid really quick. Because I remember growing up with it, and I used to miss so much school, and my friends at school used to like help catch me up with all the lessons.
Yeah.
Later, like we used to trade gingerbread men. Oh, I'll be like, will you teach me? Because I didn't have a tutor or anything. I'm like, I'll give you a gingerbread man. You can just take me through this math question.
Wow.
And it was hilarious. But because I always just wanted to be in the same set as my friends, it just really pushed me to be like, okay, well, we'll just keep getting this wrong until I get it right.
Put the extra time and effort in.
Yeah, and it didn't matter if it took me like 4 times the amount of effort and mental pain than it took my friends, because like the naivety of just wanting to be in the same class as them really just pushed me.
Yeah, and then I suppose the same, you found out about the benign brain tumour. Most people would give up then, but because you're already used to that, you're able to push past what I was speaking about earlier, like the fear. So was there no fear of getting back in the ring? No,
I was just kind of like, well, the doctors have told me I'm okay to box. That's their job. Like, that's their professional job. Yeah. I just need to trust that, because otherwise I'm just going to end up spending the rest of my life in fear and worry if I then don't. It's one thing if they said, look, it's going to make it so much worse, we recommend you should stop. You know, that's a different conversation. But they said I'm okay. And so, you know, like part of getting through a fear is facing it and turning up. And so continuing to turn up each day and, you know, put myself in that situation means that it gets smaller and smaller each and every time.
I feel like that's what I need to do. Because I definitely had that barrier and that fear. I know a lot of my clients, they're dealing with things, changing body, like changing energy, all of that kind of thing. And a lot of them do want to keep pushing themselves through. But maybe it is the trust thing, like trusting the doctor and trusting your body. I trust neither.
Yeah, I'd say, like, I always say that my worst habit is like this blind positivity that things just work out. Yeah. And I say it's like one of my greatest strengths in the fact that it means I do so much, but it's also like one of my flaws in the fact that like sometimes I'm just so blindly positive. People are like, why didn't you see that didn't work out? And I'm like, what do you mean? It has all this reason to succeed. But you know, it helped. That's my way of like stepping into that uncomfortable, you know, that zone that is actually just growth.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I need to learn to do, and I really want to, and that's what I'll take away from today. I'm going to sign up for the class.
That's it.
I'm going to go and do it, even though the fear's there. And it's, even if I just book the class, but I get so cross with myself because I feel like I used to be so fit and I used to trust my body so much and trust in everything and that it would work out and that I could do anything. And when that's ripped away, I'm struggling to like push past it. And I feel like I need to listen to people like yourself where just trust. It is trust. It's trusting in my body and trusting in, like, say, what the doctor's saying, that everything's going to be all right. Because in 10 years' time, when I look back, I'm not going to be grateful to that person that didn't trust. Yeah. I've got to just kind of push through.
And also just having a fair comparison, you know, as opposed to comparing yourself to like the best possible state you were ever in. Yeah. As opposed to, actually, I'm just going to be better than myself yesterday. And like
Yes.
that's the new barometer that you compare yourself to.
Stop getting out that picture with the 6-pack.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I do
it's
that
not
too.
fair.
I'm just like, oh, look how fit I am. But then like, you know, I've been in a weight cut for 8 weeks and I'm like fighting fit.
Yeah.
Like, why am I comparing myself to I've just come from holiday and, you know,
Yes.
been loving life? Like, that's such a silly thing to do.
So you do give yourself periods of time where you allow yourself to, like,
yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
just think it's about balance, and like don't mentally torment yourself by comparing yourself to, you know, like something that isn't fair.
mm,
You know, if you're gonna like take on anything, then you just need to have a fair comparison.
yeah,
Not like from 5 years ago when you were doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, actually, no, this is where I am now. This is where I'm comparing myself to.
So I suppose you did that as well, didn't you? When you went from the Taekwondo into the boxing, you started afresh, so you weren't comparing yourself.
I mean, I definitely was at the beginning, but it was,
Well, yeah.
you know, it's like getting into that mindset of like, but I'm not comparing myself to Nicola, the Taekwondo and Lethway world champion.
Yeah.
It's Nicola, the boxer, and this is my journey so far.
Yeah. When do you know when is, because we were speaking earlier, weren't we, about the other type of fighting that you tried? What was that called?
Lethway.
You Lethway.
Lethway.
And like you tapped into that and decided that that's not for you. So do you just trust your instinct when you're doing something? Kind of, obviously, yeah. I'll let you tell that story.
Yeah, so Lethway is a Burmese martial art. It allows punches, kicks, knees, elbows, headbutts, all with no gloves.
That's insane.
And I remember watching, I was saying to you earlier, I remember watching lads fight under these rules. And I remember thinking like, why are they so cagey? It looks like they're being chickens, like they don't want to hit each other. And then like fast forward, I don't know, a year later and I'm in the ring and I get my first punch to the face with no gloves on. I'm like, oh, I understand it now, you know? And I've never been more terrified for a fight than that exact fight.
Wow.
But I've also never felt euphoria like anything other, like whatever's above cloud 9. I remember life was just great after I won that fight. I just felt like
so you
invincible.
won as well.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did. I remember just wearing sunshades for weeks and weeks because I was like in my own little world of like euphoria, and I was like, this feels great.
Wow. Yeah. So even though you were afraid, you still pushed through, and then even
terrified. I nearly didn't walk out. I remember being in the changing room and just thinking like, if I walk out right now, in the grand scheme of things, like no one will really care because I'll just be the girl who walked out and no one will remember my name. And then there was this little voice that's like, but if you don't, and I was like, yeah, but if I don't, then like I don't know what will happen. And yeah, when they raised my hand at the end to say I'd won, I genuinely was happy that I won, but I was happy to be alive because in my head, like worst case scenario is like, she'll headbutt me and I'll die on the floor, you know.
Yeah, I would have been running the other way, definitely. So did you just do that one fight then and then draw a line under that experience, or did you keep going?
So I actually wanted to go back and do a couple more fights, but Burma had a military coup and they shut down the country, I want to say in about 2020.
So you had to go over
Yeah, so I had
Burma.
to fly over to Burma to fight under those rules.
I did think I've never heard of it in the UK.
I don't think we fight under that style in the UK.
I was thinking, is this all underhand? Like,
yeah, definitely in Asia.
Wow. Okay. So do you think you would have carried on going if you could?
The thing that grabbed me the most was the euphoria.
Okay.
You know, there's that saying, and I always butcher it. It's like everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that. But until that fight, I had the most fear ever. I think I didn't speak to my mum for like 3 days because I was just quietly like in my own head thinking like, oh my God, what have I signed up for? Like I haven't had a street fight. I never get into altercations. Like everything's very chill and calm. I've only ever thrown a headbutt on a pad.
Yeah.
I've never punched anyone without a glove on my hand. Like, what am I actually doing? You know, and I didn't have an appreciation because it was in Asia and we're not in sort of like the Western world. Backstage, like all the locals were taking this like betel nut, which is like, I'm not sure. I think it just helps numb them out. And they're all taking it in the changing room before they went out to fight. And I was like, they're not even like fully present.
Yeah, gosh.
But they're doing that to numb themselves out. Like, again, what have I signed up for?
Wow.
And then we don't have the same like healthcare. Like you don't start fights in the UK without like the ambulance being there and like paramedics there. And I remember being like, oh, I'm going to go see a doctor to get a check over. And he was like, oh, something happened. I was like, no, because I'm like, and he was like, oh, well, of course I want if something happens. And I was literally like, oh my God.
What made you want to do it in the first place? Do you think, because obviously your parents are, do you say Burmese?
My mother's Burmese, my dad's Italian.
Okay. So you think did you want to go there and do it because of your heritage and you felt connected to like that way of fighting, or was it just something you saw?
I definitely wanted to do it for my heritage, you know, and I remember mum coming, like just growing up as a kid, I remember mum always saying she wanted to go back to Burma.
Yeah.
And I just always remember saying, this is before I'd even started martial arts, like, Mum, one day when I grow up, I'm going to take you back to Burma.
Yeah.
You know, you just sort of say these mantras growing up.
Yeah.
And
Manifested
then the day came. Yeah, and I was like, Mum, I'm taking you back to Burma. But, you know, like, plot twist, I'm going to be fighting bare knuckle boxing. And I didn't tell her the rule set until we got there because I was like, she's going to absolutely be terrified.
I was going to ask, like, what your mum and dad's, like, reactions were.
So only Mum came to that fight with her best friend, Jan.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell her about the fight, but we'd gone to watch the first few fights because I was the co-main event.
Yeah.
And they had no gloves on. Mum was like, you're going to be fighting with gloves, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. Because in my head, I was like, she could just worry once, like during the real thing, not twice.
You're lucky she didn't jump in the ring.
Oh my God.
Bless her.
And then when I'd finished, and I dislocated my shoulder in that fight too.
Wow.
And I'd like gone to like lay down to find the doctor afterwards. He was like waiting to come over. And my mum, I just remember mum coming over to she didn't say well done. She was like, you're never doing that again.
Your mum probably had them shut down.
She did not enjoy it at all.
Wow. I love that. I love the journey and the fact that you're able to take so many leaps of faith. Because it is difficult to do that sometimes, but you were able to just kind of push yourself through and definitely inspire me to do that. I am going home and I'm going to trust. Because speaking to you, I've realised that it is about trust in yourself, trust in the process, and that everything's kind of going to work out.
Yeah. And sometimes just showing up. So like booking the session so you have the accountability. And it doesn't matter if you show up and, it doesn't feel like that was 100% your best. But like the important things you showed up.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can just keep showing up, like that'll help and like without you even realising. And that's such an important step. Yeah.
And the gym that you go to, what's it called?
Steel City.
Steel City. Do they do like general classes or is it just like a professional gym?
So they do a whole host of things. They have women's only classes. They've got kids classes. They've got amateur classes and they've got a professional stable for boxers.
Love that. Do you get involved in any of that or?
I don't have the time. I'd love to get involved. I just don't have the time.
I was more thinking as well if you get injured while doing all of that stuff as well. Like quite risky, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want somebody like me throwing one at you. And
but the injury risk is always there. But to be honest, I think I've always picked up more injuries outside the boxing ring than inside. Yeah, I just think.
Yeah.
I've been relatively safe actually in boxing so far. I don't think I've picked up any injuries.
That's really good.
And they've all been like unintentionally self-inflicted.
Oh God.
Yeah.
You sound like me. There's hope for me yet then. So that's fine.
Yes.
So I've really, really enjoyed my conversation. You've probably noticed that my brain goes like all over, no proper structure, but I just feel like I like asking the questions that we would naturally ask in a conversation. But the Tell Her podcast is generally like extraordinary, ordinary women. And like you say, you're in a corporate job, but you're doing this, which is extraordinary as well, working your way up through the corporate ladder. But like your extraordinary career and pushing yourself through, even in the face of adversity, is amazing. And the Tell Her part of that is like, if you could go back and tell like your past self something, what would you tell her? And what do you tell yourself now when you want to push through for the future to benefit your future self? So we'll do like the past.
Yeah. So if I was to tell my younger self anything, it would be trust the process.
Yeah.
I think I'm always so eager to know what happens next.
Mm.
You know, like if I ever open a book, I just want to know what happens at the ending. If someone starts the story, I just want to know the plot and the ending. Like I want to snap. But just to, if I could, if there's anything I could tell my younger self is trust the process and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? We think life is such a race, and really it's just one big journey, because like the end point is the same for everyone, and so
that's true.
You just need to like live life to the best that you can
in that moment.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you, if you're having, like, I suppose during the periods where you have had to like pause for a little bit of time to regather everything, what is that process? What do you tell yourself to help yourself get through that?
So for me, it's just the question I ask myself is, what's one small step that's going to help me right now? You know, if I'm really stuck and I'm not too sure what, like, where I want to focus my energy next, or what the next big grand plan is, it's like, just start with one small step, and just give that 100% of my focus, and then do the next one. Because as much as it's great to dream big and have all these great aspirations, sometimes you can scare yourself by thinking it's so far away or so big, that actually just having small consistent progress, I find for me personally, really helps.
I definitely think that, and I've done that as well in the past, where I think too far forward and then feel like I'm failing because I can't take that massive leap. So definitely taking the small steps and accepting help for me as well along the way. And like for you, you have your team around you.
Yeah.
And without them, like, would you be able to achieve what you're achieving? And for somebody like me, I've had to accept that you do need a team.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do anything that I'm doing now without a team.
It's amazing. Thank you.
It has
been amazing. Thank you. And I'm sorry. I feel like everyone comes thinking I'm going to be all professional. I'm like, I'm not. But I feel that the people that I meet, I just want to have like general conversations and real conversations, and talk about what it really feels like. And a lot of the people that will be listening, especially like my clients that have been through different things, because I don't know if you know much about my background, but I'm a hair loss specialist. That's my background. And a lot of the women that I meet, they're on a massive journey. They'll be at all different parts. And I think to hear how you keep pushing through will hopefully inspire them. That's one of the cameras.
Hey.
Just in time. Yeah, so I'm really, really grateful for everything. I think that you'll inspire a lot of people.
Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And it's nice because you ask such different questions that literally make me stop and think. Because sometimes interviews do get a bit repetitive because everyone sort of asks the same things.
Yeah. I've got a creative brain, so it's like...
No, I like it. I think it's like mine. I have like one small thought and I'm just like, and they're like, how did you get there? And I'm like, what do you mean you didn't see the connection? And they're like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's me. There's no connection, but we got there. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. If anybody wants to know a little bit more about yourself or the things that you're doing, where can they find that information?
So people can find that on my socials. I've got LinkedIn, which is Nicola M. Barke, and then Instagram, Facebook is at @the.BurmesePython.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.